Good morning. This is the House Appropriations Committee. It is Friday, February 13th, 2026. It's just after 11:20 a.m. and we're continuing our FY27 budget with ANR. And right now we have the Department of Fish and Wildlife. So welcome. And if you want to introduce yourself and take it away. Thanks.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Jason Batchelder. I'm the newest Fish and Wildlife Commissioner. Took over around July 28th, most recently DEC Commissioner, and before that I was retired, stay-at-home dad, and before that I was the Director of the Warden Service. So I've been around ANR for quite a while. Haven't gotten quite this detailed look at the budget in those 20 plus years, but I'm happy to be here today. I'm also joined by our Chief of Operations, Andrea Shortsleeve, who you met last year, and Commissioner. I'm so lucky to be following in her footsteps and help her a lot, and also by our Business Manager, Elizabeth Stratton. I may look their direction for a couple, if you get into some granular questions that I can't answer, please maybe expect that. I certainly like to do it.
On a friend.
Thank you. Again, thank you for having me. A bit of a lead in sort of to set the stage of where we feel we're at and why we're here. I'm very, very proud and fortunate Commissioner of Fish and Wildlife. I'd like to acknowledge that as we examine this specific governor's recommended budget, that Vermont is experiencing a time of mildly declining license sales. It's a national trend and we're not exempt. But at the same time, we feel that our participation couldn't be better. Very, very strong participation in our hunting, fishing, trapping communities. And I wanted to point that out. The heritage and culture behind hunting and fishing has been strong for collective memory, right? But it's within that statement lives some complications. As you know, our demographic is aging, and some of our most hardy participants are aging along with that demographic and hitting a cliff where they're no longer paying into our systems. When a person reaches 66, they pay a one-time fee and they have a lifetime license.
Remember when we did that?
You may know some folks that have these licenses. And yes, wonderful opportunity. But has caused us to hit a wall with some funding opportunities. Large participation, but a funding end. Additionally, our new hunters and anglers are entering their years without having to purchase a license also, because if you can believe it, almost 20% of our newborns in Vermont are gifted a lifetime license within the first year of their life.
That's an option that we have.
It is an option that we have, and a wonderful one, I would add. My kids all have lifetime licenses. They won't have to buy a license. And there are some exceptions. If they want a special tag, they need to buy a tag. If they want an antlerless permit, they would need to pay the $10. Right? But they would simply just want to go dunk a worm. They won't need a license for the rest of their lives to do that. Hunting ends a little bit sooner. Begins a little bit sooner. Some kids hunt younger in Vermont and they would need a license as soon as they hunted. And that license is very inexpensive for a youth anyway. So there's some challenges there. As you can see, participation, we're lauding our participation, but our ability to carry ourselves in a way that's more self-funded is challenged by those situations. Let's see here. All the while, I would add that more and more Vermonters are taking advantage of our services as a department. Our lands, our infrastructure, and the expertise of our biologists is being utilized at a rate that I don't know that we've ever seen. Simply, folks want to be involved with fish and wildlife, and we're so proud and excited about that. They value our staff for their time and effort, and it simply leads to capacity issues around the work that we're charged with. I used to say jokingly, of course, that people who are going to move to Vermont aren't doing it for big bucks and giant trout. They're doing it for Bernie's mittens. But I now see, and I love that, right? That's why I live here. But I now see that it may not be for a reason that might cause them to buy a license that we provide, but to be outdoors demands relevancy from the department. And that's my little stage setting. I wanted to mention. We're certainly proud of everything that our department does, but it is expensive, as is everything post-COVID, and probably anyway. So I'm on my first slide here. So this is our recommended budget. Our overview here is our, got 6 bullets here that I'd like to touch on. So our mission, our department structure, our prior fiscal year appropriation update, our overview, our proposed budget language, our division budgets individually, and then some reports on some other information. So our mission is the conservation of fish, wildlife, and plants and their habitats for the people of Vermont. People like to think of us as the sort of the hunting and fishing department, but we don't look at ourselves that way. You can head to the next slide, please, Elizabeth. We look at ourselves as individual biologists, wardens, technical staff that focus on natural communities, habitat, the creepy crawlies like invertebrates and centipedes, right? And all the way up through our charismatic species like bears and bobcats. I think that's how, if you ask staff, we would look at ourselves sort of from the outside. Next slide is who we serve. We certainly serve the hook and bullet crowd, as people like to say, but more increasingly, landowners are coming to us for their expertise. Wildlife watchers are an extraordinary part of our lives now. We manage habitat for birds, all kinds of wildlife for people to see and enjoy, and that don't necessarily have to take it home and put it in the freezer. And while respecting our heritage and our hunters and trappers and anglers who do still put a lot of wild protein in their freezers. We can jump to the next one. Our organizational structure of our 144 permanent employees looks like this. So we have my office, which is 3 people. So it's Andrea, myself, and Abigail, my assistant. And then our 5 divisions, and you can see those there. Administration, wildlife, fish, warden service, and outreach. Jumping to our prior fiscal year updates, as you can see, we've got a little bit of an outline. There's a couple trends there that you can see through the one-time appropriations for the LCI. There are some one-time appropriations around some non-dedicated special funds to sustain our current operations and our restructuring, our restructuring study, which I will touch on. Some of you may have heard about, very exciting. One-time cash funds for the Walleye Association. And then a position of fund for a specialist position, which has been officially hired. We're very lucky. That person's going to be working on Act 181, some support around Act 250 and Section 248 work. Exciting stuff.
So I want to pause for a moment about the fishing derby.
Okay.
Because we've had discussions in this committee the last couple of years about the 30,000 and whatever. How do you define success there? How do you know whether it's worth us putting $30,000 into it?
It's a wonderful question. My personal opinion, and I don't know if I've been asked this specifically, Madam Chair, my personal opinion is it's an alignment with an organization that brings joy and opportunity to many, many people. That's how I look at it as success. It's a perpetual event that the department can align themselves with, bless you. And I feel like the ability to align ourselves with them is worth it. People see us as a partner. People see us as an opportunity that provides some of the fish that are caught in these derbies. And in a roundabout way, license sales probably are affected. That's how I look at this effort.
So do you keep track of, or do you work with travel and tourism on this at all? Do you keep track of how many people participate every year? How many are from in-state, out of state? Do we have any numbers around those kinds of things?
Those numbers exist, specifically the participants and the license holders that would be associated with that participation. As far as working with travel and tourism, I don't know. I would look over here, but I'm seeing no. But I can write that down and get back to you on it. I certainly would imagine that if we ceased it, we might hear from those folks, but I don't know.
It seems to me that this is a place where travel and tourism and your group can collaborate because
Agreed.
we're giving 30,000 to an event. We don't give money to all events that happen in the state of Vermont. So I wonder why we picked this one and not other ones, and can we leverage it even more? Yeah, Lynn.
Yeah, there's also rod and gun type of events that involve people come in from out of state and do like target practice and raise money for these local rod and gun clubs or outdoor clubs, and they can bring a lot of people and a lot of money. And it's the same question as to the fishing derby.
Yeah.
Do you coordinate with the local people who do this and track how many people come in here? Because when they are here, they go to the competition or whatever, they get awards, whatever. They aren't really killing anything or getting food or getting, but there's two kinds of gun use. One, of course, is hunting, and the other is this target sport type of competition thing.
Sure.
But they come in and they get hotel rooms, they spend a lot of money, go out to dinner, they stay here, they're
Sure.
things like that. And I might add the same with snowmobile clubs and things like that do.
Sure.
Is this something that you have looked at, or because it is a potential source of revenue?
Sure. As you may know, we benefit greatly from shooting sports. You may know this through the Pittman Robertson Fund, excise taxes on guns and ammo. So we realize that we benefit directly from these activities. I don't think we reach out to them directly in an encouraging way to be here, but neither do we discourage them. I participate in events annually that are strictly shooting leading up to hunting seasons. And the department sponsors those. We certainly pay into public shooting ranges. We own shooting ranges ourselves. So I feel like we're a welcoming agency to shooting sports. But I completely hear your point. Capturing the demographic and reaching out to them in a meaningful way may be something that we could explore. I don't know.
Yeah, it's a value added piece.
Absolutely.
It's not just what you provide, but it creates the potential for bringing more people in to do these things.
Sure.
There was some I think up in the Northeast Kingdom that had 350 participants.
Sure.
Paying a fee.
And buying ammunition and excise taxes on guns.
Staying in
So,
hotels,
sure.
or going out to dinner, spending money at other things it would be a travel tourism type of piece.
So we do work with the National Shooting Sports Foundation quite a bit, and I'm wondering if they have this data in a Vermont specific way. If you said this around, how many folks are hunting rough grouse in the Northeast Kingdom annually, I feel that demographic could be captured by us. Maybe not that minutia, but I feel that there is an entity that could capture this for you. And if you're interested, I can with the chair's question, I can respond to that after the meeting or perhaps next week, see if I can get you an answer. If we can capture that. Absolutely.
Great. Wayne,
I just comment. The Derby is very large, and I know that you could get the numbers from there. And of course, Dingle Johnson money is money that comes from excise taxes on fishing, hunting equipment, boats, and all that. Tremendous boats, the cost of boats these days. And so all of those, if you buy a lure like this for one fishing lure, what's the cost? It'd be like $5, $6, $7, right, for just a lure. So the amount of money spent is significant.
it would be nice to have some of those metrics so that we
should
see, because some people will come with it, some people may buy stuff, but then, are people actually staying in camp? Are they camping? Are they staying in hotels? And
of course, all the gas.
there's that whole-
Up and down the lake with gas, so all
Yeah.
the gas tax.
in our lake.
We don't want to go there.
I know. There's trade-offs for everything. Anyway, getting more information about that, I think would be really helpful.
I'd be happy to do it.
Yeah, and I think travel and tourism ought to be working with you on this, because it seems like it's, yeah,
Sure.
okay.
So our next slide is our budget overview by program. You can see that breakdown there. Fisheries, Warden Service, Wildlife, Outreach and Education, Administration, and then Lands Acquisition. Any questions on this slide? I understood you had some questions for the secretary around land acquisition. But I'm happy to shift over it.
When you talk about outreach and education, what are some of the things that you do there?
Yeah, great question. So that is the division that's in charge of all our social media platforms, hunter education, as well as our conservation camps, which went live today. If you have any young folks between 12 and 14 that haven't been to camp, the sign up is live. The tuition increased this year by $50, which is still likely the best deal in the country, I would imagine, unless it's free. But these camps are renowned for their ability to reach kids and get them into the outdoors. Allie Thomas is our director of the outreach division, does an amazing job. She's a biologist by trade, but makes camps a very special place. My son attended for the first time last year. It's where I got my start as a Fish and Wildlife employee and a camper. We can't say enough good things about that, but that's what they're known for. They're known for the camps. And likely everyone has heard about them. Very, very grateful that we're able to continue that education.
Wait.
Still doing the teacher education?
We are. Yep, we are. We have a teacher's course first week of July, maybe second week of July, where certified teachers from anywhere can come and receive continuing education with credit, master's level, where Allie teaches in a conservation setting, outdoor education, which they can further their curriculum with. It's really extraordinary, and all corners of the department participate in it, from the warden service to the biological staff to the commissioner's office, and they're out scooping bogs and pulling bugs out of swamps and doing all kinds of fun things along the way. So they have a great week. It's very valuable. Thanks for pointing that out. So some of our proposed budget language includes the Fish and Wildlife area license, which some of you have heard about, as well as an effort that's now underway in House Natural to reconcile some of the board regulation changes with our license fee schedule. I'd love to take a minute and touch on the area license because it's been
Yes.
a bit of a hot button for folks. Yeah, you may have heard of this.
Yes.
Yes, so apologize. This, I know we don't have a ton of time, but
That's all right. This is the one I wanted to hear
Yeah.
about.
this is important. I think first and foremost, the commissioner of the day, so this falls to me, may set rules to create fees around uses of our lands. So if you back up, call it 50, 100 years, hunters, anglers, motorboat registration purchasers have been acquiring our lands for us, fishing access areas specifically. We're focused on fishing access areas right now. They've been purchasing these lands for us. And paddlers and bird watchers, essentially, where this would apply, have been getting a free pass for no other easy way to say it. And we've been thankful for that. We have been catering to all users for a long time. But in my intro, you heard me say that capacity has become an issue. We have the ability to set these fees, which would exempt many folks, including people who already have a license given by the department or paid for that we provide as a department. And simply asking paddlers and wildlife watchers and other lawful users of the access areas to pay a license, purchase a license to use those areas.
Would that be a day pass or that's a
Could be both.
year or?
Could be, we would have an option for a day pass. We would have an option for an annual license. Part of this this technical corrections bill that we introduced in House Natural Wednesday is asking for a 365-day ability. Currently, we're on a calendar year license purchase schedule, but this would allow us to you could purchase your license today and it would be good until this time next year. Something we're excited about and something that we see that reduces churn with folks who every other year may not buy a license. But some of the questions folks have are around enforcement. and how much money we would make. You can see the number there at the bottom is looking at the first year, which we're looking at a rollout around Memorial Day of 2027 for the boating season, up to 4 years from then in 2029, upwards of 290,000, which we've been told is a conservative amount. At the same time, we feel that there could be some wiggle room in there.
So, who would start having to pay? I got paddlers. Canoe kayaks. Who else?
Bird watchers.
Bird watchers?
Yep.
People
And,
just walking around on the,
well, it would still have to be an authorized use of the access area. So right now, dog walkers are not allowed. You couldn't
Okay.
pull into an access area and walk your dog. Although I say this in all neighborly seriousness, wardens are not out there patrolling and kicking people out on a daily basis for a lot of things, right? This all is based on reasonableness and availability. If there are 20 cars there trying to fish and someone pulls in and wants to walk 10 dogs, that's a conflict and an unallowed use.
okay. So I
It's
don't
not allowed
know
on the
all of
good.
the access areas, but I know some on the Otter Creek, you know, and there's sort of like room for a car or truck to back its boat in, and then they have to go park somewhere else. So if I'm a bird watcher and I just want to pull in my car and see if that was a snow, whatever, is that snow geese, snow goose, or a hawk, and I'm there for 5 minutes, I'm supposed to pay now?
Well, technically, yes. At worst case scenario, run it right to the end, yes. But in these worst case scenarios, we also build in, if someone wanted to run their child down there to pee, that's not a lawful use either, but we wouldn't say anything, right? But yes, so the intended use for this is to take a group of bird watchers more appropriately to a place like South Bay Wildlife Management Area where there are rare birds. They want to use our access area to launch, to go out and watch birds for the day. This would be a license that we would like to require.
But they're launching in a boat?
They would be launching if they were launching in a motorboat, they'd be exempt. If they were launching in a canoe, they would not need to pay.
Motorboats are exempt.
Exempt because they pay.
They already have paid something.
That's right.
Okay,
And if you had a fishing license, you'd be exempt also, or hunting license.
okay. Mike and then John.
Thanks for coming.
Sir,
I'm a paddler and I fish too, and I'm okay with this. We use the put-ins at Putney and Dummerston pretty regularly. Several years ago that we had quite a situation down there. Enforcement was including, I was contacted by a family who was visiting from England, came to Vermont for, remember this, having a picnic at the Putney, and were told they had to leave immediately. My constituents who set up easels to paint the river, were told they had to leave. So going back to when, and this is just the start of what was happening. So this is when David Dean was chair. So we had quite a process. And from what I remember, Michael O'Grady was saying that these people did have right to be there as secondary users. And that because these areas were no longer solely funded by state dollars, that there was federal regulations that were impacting this situation, which provided access for these secondary users. Are you saying that's changed?
well, I think more appropriately, it was never the case. It was never the case. So these federal funds are tied directly to our control of these access areas. So we have to have ultimate control over these access areas with rules that we provide that are cross-referenced with checks and balances through the federal system. And if the federal system says we can allow these uses, then they're okay. We have a friendly disagreement with Mr. O'Grady, a respectful one. I think that he is running down some ideas now that may pan out and may not. But these are paid for by some state dollars through the grace of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service match funds, and are tied to direct uses that must be approved and must not relinquish control of the State Fish and Wildlife Agency. So what I see in those instances, and I lived through that. I was the chief warden when David Dean was there, and talked through that situation, which was unfortunate. At the time, what my answer would be now is if they had a line in the water, they would have been 100% legal. There's nothing that says you can't paint a picture while you're fishing or have lunch while you're fishing. But the slippery slope of having that being viewed as a swimming area or a place to picnic could lead, and some people think this is a frivolous argument, and I completely get all sides of this, but looking at me saying this is not an allowed use, and then having our regional director from the Fish and Wildlife Service come down and say, are you really allowing people to picnic here? We need to have a conversation. That's a real challenge to our loss of control. And so that there are situations that I feel are unfortunate, and we want people to come to Vermont. We want people to enjoy our lands. And at that time, that was a bummer of a situation for me to have to be called on the carpet on. I get it. Some enforcement is unsavory, but it was there for a reason, and I remember that well. But if someone bought an access license now, that activity would still have to fall within something that we feel was not a loss of control. And those are the two examples I can give you now. So bird watching, some manner of wildlife-based recreation, and paddling. So also an approved use, but not paying. And so to also further this conversation, if you were to access the lake or the pond from another area, it's still free. If you have a camp there, you paddle out. We're not coming out. This isn't a water pass. This is a pass to use lands that were brought to us by a certain user group and a fee-paying group that is being exhausted at the moment. And so we're looking for other ways to fund that. So I completely understand, and I appreciate fishing license, and that is another way to be exempted from this proposed mandate.
So John, and then I have a question. Go ahead.
So I have two questions, actually. So this is being classified or defined as a license here. And when you look at other places where these kinds of things are happening here, I mean, my familiarity is primarily like national forest lands here. You know, long time user national White Mountains National Forest, and I know when they created that parking pass thing there to have access, it was a fee generation idea here. It's been very successful. Took a little time for it to kind of take hold here because people know what they know. They don't know what they don't know. They want to go for a short hike place and didn't know they had to have something kind of park a car there. So one thing is about license versus an access pass, is verbiage that way versus a fishing license or a hunting license or those kinds of things. And I also remember here too, when people were getting used to having to purchase that thing, which is pretty inexpensive. It's like $30 a year for an individual currently here. It's $40 for a household. So if your shy has a car and someone else and some of your family has a car, you just have access to your vehicles that you use. Doesn't matter which one you use.
Yeah.
You're going out to separate things. So it's about the license versus pass thing right here. Enforcement of that. National Forest Service, they have a law enforcement division obviously here, but a lot of the rangers would stop by and they wouldn't see a sticker on your windshield kind of thing. And they'll leave you a reminder, hey, just so you know. And they would take your information. They're not there to find anybody here. And that worked pretty well. It just as a reminder piece.
Sure.
So you start thinking about the operational thing, should it go through? A few things. I'm happy to chat with you about that.
Yeah.
Interested, but so pass versus license, what are other states doing as they're thinking about the same types of things you are when there's fewer people hunting or fishing?
Sure. We modeled this after approximately 14 states, I believe, that we studied, and including some nearby states, and I think most acutely Delaware, Virginia, and Montana, who've had some ups and downs with this. Additionally, I'm committed to a very soft rollout of this within the Warden Service. Having come from an enforcement background, I understand now, having been retired and not in law enforcement for 20 years, what it's like to have a law enforcement encounter over something like this, right? Something that people have been getting for free forever, essentially for most people, it's forever. Want to go paddling? You have the access, right? And committed to a very soft rollout and having this be a passive QR code type opt-in for people, not an opt-in, it's a bad choice of words. But have a QR code at our kiosks where this now says this is a fee area, right? Please, if you're going to use for these reasons, which are approved, scan your phone. You've got it on your device in perpetuity for that year, and you're good to go. And then if you were to encounter a warden and you weren't fishing, the warden might check your life jacket, ask for your area license. If you didn't have one, we'd much rather sell you a license than write you a ticket for this. The ticket money goes to the general fund, but this would be if I'm not mistaken, this could be matched. This because it's a license to your question, because it's a license, it can be matched federally and bring money back to us in triplicate perhaps.
So I have two questions.
Okay.
You talk about $50,000 in FY 27. Have you assumed that revenue in your budget projections?
Yes, we have.
So, okay. And so that's my first question.
Okay.
That's all I needed was a yes or no on that. So my second question is, the governor has been very clear for 10 years, no new taxes, no new fees. He has not done a fee bill. This is a fee. How does that jive with what his stated anti-fee approach to government? I mean, how does this work? How can you do this?
Sure. It's a wonderful question. I think I've been consistent in my answer. This is a moment in time where I think the governor recognizes the pressures that the department feels, and looking at this as a license and a place where this is a fee-based opportunity for let's say 110,000 Vermonters who have been paying in, asking some of the ones who have been getting it for free to pay now. Is a moment in time that we feel like it's not worth passing up.
Okay, so one could argue the same thing about a whole lot of other fees that are not being allowed to go forward for the last 10 years.
Sure.
So, and maybe, this may not be a question for you, but I just want to go on record saying why now and why this one and why not all the other ones?
I appreciate that very much. This is my charge and how I respond to it. And I expected that question. I appreciate it very much. And I can easily see the disparity in my feeble brain.
So you get through, but the other ones don't.
Yeah, and having a 4-year runway on this before we get to the amount that we want is also worth examining. And if we get to $20 for this, 7 cents a day, if you bought it on January 1st, it is not an onerous ask of.
It's the principle of that's what I'm talking about. So I'm sort of stating this, and it's maybe somewhat rhetorical for you, but I just sort of wondered if you had, how you got sort of special dispensation to have this happen where other people have not been able to have that happen.
The deputy secretary has a interjection.
Would you like to? Yes.
I don't know if this will be a sufficient answer, but I know part of the logic for the administration's support of this is, as Jason noted, these are anchor ag areas, and essentially what we're trying to do with this license is to capture the actual users, which we're not doing right now. So I think that's part of the uniqueness. There might be equivalent similar program. But the intent here is just to ensure users are paying.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, so that's the logic that's being used.
And if I can bring up one more point, thank you, Deputy Secretary.
Sorry, the BHCC
Sure.
folks are exiting, and I just went out to ask them to. There's 10 signs out there saying be quiet, but they all stand around and talk.
I inadvertently, I wouldn't say I aimed this correctly by skill, but this is an opt-in. If folks want to go and use their camp access, they don't have to go through our fishing access areas.
Right. Some people don't have a choice.
Some don't have a
Some don't have a
choice,
choice.
and that's it's a point worth mentioning, right?
Okay.
But this is, if you don't want to use our lands in our access areas, in our kiosks, that's okay. But if you do, we're asking this.
And so this has to go through a bill, right? It has to pass through the House and the Senate.
It does not. It does have to go through ICAR. This falls under Commissioner of the Day's purview. So I can set this myself.
So the ICAR is, I'm looking at government, that's different than LCAR, you know,
ICAR's, you can see parking. They review, then it comes to.
it will come to LCAR.
We'll go through both. Okay, so to go through both. So yes and no.
Okay, but not a separate bill. All right, just trying to figure this out.
Sure.
Okay. Thank you.
Of course.
Letting me grill you.
Of course. Yeah, I appreciate it very much. I'm glad you didn't tiptoe around it.
I do have a question. However, if you have included $50,000 in your budget, assumption in terms of a revenue, what will you do if this does not get approved?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think later on, you'll see we do have a special fund to fall back on. We would make adjustments on the fly as we have done. But it's a great question. I was encouraged to hear that these are conservative amounts and amounts that we expect to see through a 2018 study that we did. But it's a fair question. We would have to do some adjustments.
Adjustments in your budget. Revenue doesn't go.
That's right.
We can move on to slide whatever.
Sure. I think our next slide is important. So this is our administration division sort of budget information overview. For some reason, my graphic isn't coming up on my screen, but I can see it here.
You can see it there.
Yeah. Sure. So there's our breakdown of our funding and then how it's spent on the right-hand side. You'll see that there was some one-time funding from our Fish and Wildlife Fund balance for our new point of sale system, which is sort of our license system and what would be used for this license. And then an increase in internal service funds. And then you can see at the bottom there, the large ADS fee increase.
This is their new, the way they're doing it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Fisheries division, this is our fish culture section. So fisheries is broken down into 3 sections. This is our fish culture section, which is responsible for a large portion of our general fund. You can see the money on the left and how it's spent on the right, largely a very lean operation. But as you can see, when we were hit with this ADS increase, that middle bullet there was forced us into a proposed RIF. Undesirable, but we felt necessary. And
the change in ADS billing is forcing you to RIF a person?
This was the last straw. This was the last straw. We had level funded. We had made many adjustments, including completely cutting our truck and equipment budget, and felt we had no other options at the 0 hour. As you know, this happened very close to the holidays and right at the 0 hour. So this was an undesirable, but a direction that we felt we had to go. And granted, it is our largest budget within the department. The governor did not want to go in the direction of the warden service, which is our next largest budget. They'd already been incurring some serious vacancies. So we went with a fish culture specialist position at Edwee Hatchery.
Salisbury Fish Hatchery is still open.
Still, thanks.
Still working on, it's come up at least twice since I've been in this committee.
Yeah, the path is bright for Salisbury, I feel. I think
So-
that is settled.
So I know the problem was about the Otter Creek and the inability, the stuff getting into the Otter Creek and not making it whatever.
Alon Brook, yes.
So you're figuring out ways to fix that. So it's
Yes.
not gonna come back next year with Salisbury
It
Fish.
should not come back through our wonderful partners at DEC. We
Okay.
feel like we have figured this
You have a
out.
plan, okay. Thank you.
And it's sort of, this is combined in the sentiment around this RIF. There's a piece of this that the show must go on. If you look at that operating budget for fish culture, I think it's remarkable that the pounds of fish that we're able to meet are just extraordinary on that small of a budget. The amount of fish we have to feed, the amount of energy we have to produce. both for electricity and trucking and circulation. It truly boggles the national mind when we are examined and looked at our fish culture and how lean and extraordinarily efficient we are. We are currently experiencing it right now. We're being examined, as you'll see in a subsequent slide if we have time. I know I'm standing between you and lunch, so maybe I'll skip right to that one. But we are simply the North Star for fish culture in the country. So I'm going to actually skip to that slide if I can. You want to just flick through and I'll tell you when to stop. We can touch on the warden service briefly. Oh, there we go. Thank you. My slides are not updating for some reason. My computer doesn't like the internet in here. So we are undergoing a couple of studies. So first and most importantly is a benchmarking study, which the Wildlife Management Institute and DJ Case consulting firms are using to compare us to similar states around the country. Most recently, I think we've gotten to our requisite amount of states with New Hampshire, and so we're gonna look at them, study them, and do comparisons. This study was slated to end in March, so coming right up, we may push that to April with the addition of New Hampshire, who wanted to help and be helped at the same time. So we're excited for that. And then a fish culture modernization project, which is being handled through a company out of Boise, McMillan Associates. They've visited all of our hatcheries and simply their jaws hit the floor, frankly, it's at how efficient we are. We are with solar installations at many of them. We simply our budget is almost identical to what it was 20 years ago in operations and overhead. But we are looking even more closely at how we can become leaner, more efficient, cleaner. And so these studies are very important to us, and we're excited to be able to tell you and tell the governor about the results. Can't see that last piece. I'm just going to bend my head around. Okay, thank you. And so, yeah, those next two bullets we've talked about. So revenue generating strategies.
You want to briefly talk to us about wildlife and or just anything you want to highlight there?
Yeah. There we go. So our wildlife division, you can see the expenses there. They're largely federally funded through Pittman Robertson, and some Fish and Wildlife Fund, very small amount of general fund. And you can see where their salaries go, or excuse me, where their money goes to salary and benefits. These are folks who are doing land and habitat management. So they are paid for their expertise with very little overhead and equipment costs. As I mentioned, our Act 181 position is now hired, and very fortunate to have that employee coming on to help some of the capacity there.
You do tick research,
Certainly do.
and that will be here?
That would be here, yes. Yep. Big research on moose.
And just, it seems like ticks are.
Yeah, we've got our fingers crossed for this winter, right? We've got a what we feel is a winter. I think our deer biologists may temper our expectations and say this is a normal winter, but we all feel like it's cold and snowy. So maybe we'll see what the ticks.
How many people are tired of that? But I can't, if it hurts the ticks, I'm all for it.
Me too.
Go ahead, Lynn.
Yeah, we're talking about partnering with other agencies. What do you do with the Department of Health, or Public Health with the tick situation?
Boy, that's a great question, and I simply do not know. I do not know what we do with health and ticks. We have an in-house tick expert who is one of our wardens, who's a peer-reviewed studier of black-legged ticks and wood ticks. But there may be crossover that I'm not aware of with health, but I don't know.
It's a huge health
It
issue,
is.
contagious disease that's become really a major issue in Vermont in the past 10, 20 years.
And our focus, as you know, has been on winter ticks with moose and the single host parasite that they embody, right? So we're in various stages of studying what reducing the moose herd does to the tick population. And I think this Wednesday at our board meeting that we're going to go over that in fine detail. So I have more to tell you about that, but that's our lens, right? Is how ticks affect our wildlife and most specifically our moose. They're a normal parasite on the landscape, but when moose densities get too, when they get too dense, ticks thrive. When moose densities loosen and spread out, the ticks have a hard time finding that host. At least that's what our science is telling us. And so we're trying to kill off these ticks through starvation and lack of a host. And we'll get an update on that this Wednesday, but we don't tend to look at it.
The secondary effect is it affects the human population, state police, fish and wildlife people, all kinds of hikers. It's a huge issue for medical community, for human beings as well.
Sure.
Wayne?
Just to make clear, there's two different courses, quite two different things, the moose tick versus the ticks that are people know. In the past, we've had University of Vermont research going on with the health department where our check stations, they would collect ticks at the check stations to look for the prevalence of not only Lyme disease, but we got diabetes and anaplasmosis so in there. So they're looking at, they have done that through time, they probably will still continue that unless they change their research back. So that's the tick that bothers humans. And the research that's ongoing on the moose tick, that's something new.
Yeah. That's an issue for the Department of Health, the Department of Public Health, the UDM, healthcare. Yeah.
For sure. I'm happy to talk to Abigail and see if she's had any crossover there.
Right.
Okay, so what's next?
Let's see. Yeah, we can touch on the warden service briefly because there was some help they received last year that was not carried over, that wasn't fully met. You can see that they're largely general fund. They do get some license dollars there, so a little over half. And they're mostly salary and benefits. They're a very lean organization as well. As expensive as they are, most of that is salary and benefits. And they were made whole as well through from an RFR last year, which I think you're all aware of. Yeah, they bought some radios last year. Didn't get all the radios that they needed, and not something that we're going to be able to react to this year, but something that's worth mentioning.
Wayne, do you have a question?
Yeah, well, like state police, of course, been in, so state police and other law enforcement agencies, can you give us just a general idea of how much cooperation you do with them? And
Yes.
a little bit about that, and also on the radio issue, state police are getting radios, and I asked you, are you using those radios to communicate with state police or other law enforcement agencies, emergency situations or when they need backup or anything like that?
We are, thank you for pointing that out. Those radios are used for interdepartment communications. They're used mostly for, it's all a public safety communications tool for wardens to let dispatchers, other officers of all types know where they are and what they are up to, right? That these radios all communicate with one another. And it is worth pointing out that letting radios span too many years will get technology out of date from which radios can talk to what other radios. I think that I appreciate you pointing that out. But certainly all of this, all of radio communications is telling people where you are and what you are doing, inherently a public safety requirement of the job.
So how frequently do you interact?
They are interacting with other agencies daily, if not hourly, when they're on patrol. Yeah, we'll call it daily, but it's, you may know our wardens are experts in way too many things, in my opinion, to say that in a very positive way. But one of the things we're called on to do now is to find evidence, homicide evidence, shooting evidence. They call us in every shooting that occurs now. Wardens are called in to find the evidence with their powder sniffing dogs, and they're batting very, very high. Not 1,000, but close. They do a wonderful job. Wardens were first on scene the other day to the skaters who were stranded on Lake Champlain, went out and assessed the ice so they could go out and be rescued. They paddled out in a kayak on a 0-degree day. It was pretty extraordinary. But yeah, they're doing all kinds of stuff. They are conservation law enforcement officers, but they're their public safety is their highest value order, right? So there are 10 things we tell them to do and public safety is on the list, they go there, right? It's not within our mission, but it's obviously their highest value order.
Thank you. So I just, one more thing, and then we'll let everybody go and have lunch.
Okay.
If you could go to page 30, the special fund operating statement.
Yes.
So this is your special fund. This is the one that you're worried about that's going down, that you don't have enough money in. But I'm seeing 1.17 million.
Yeah,
So tell me about that.
I don't,
Or
so
somebody can.
I don't know if I'm worried about this fund. This fund is a reserve fund largely to react at the moment. It's a reactionary fund and it's largely to react right now to our results of our benchmarking study. So if Wildlife Management Institute and McMillan Associates tell us something, we want to be able to react to that. And granted, these may be long-term results asks. They may not be like, you need to buy a Range Rover Sport and everything's going to be fine. That's not what I think we're going to be told to do. This will be a reactionary ask. There will be costs. And so we need to have these funds in reserve to be able to react to those results when they happen. What I like to think in my mind, this is the money that is between us and outer space from sailing away into the universe, right? This is our rainy day fund.
Okay. Great. Okay. Thank you. Any other questions? We're set.
Jason.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
Such a pleasure.
Okay, so committee, we are gonna start at 1. That's gonna work for everybody, and that will be our last. Awesome.